Chapter 13 Legacy of Ashes. The dawn after Vyuva's fall broke cold and clear, casting a pale light over the ruins of his fortress. Azural's band of fighters, rebels, and survivors gathered in the empty courtyard, the air thick with the scent of scorched stone and the lingering traces of Vyuva's dark magic. She stood before them, feeling the weight of what they had achieved settle heavily over her. It was a victory, but it was also only the beginning of something larger, a legacy that she was just beginning to grasp. The fortress felt emptier than she had anticipated, its dark halls hollow without the shadows that had once lurked within. The remnants of Vyuva's presence clung faintly to the walls, but it was no longer a living force, only a memory. Her allies moved carefully through the corridors, their faces etched with weariness but also a quiet pride. They had done what many had thought impossible. They had broken the spine of Vyuva's power, struck a blow that would echo across the land. Soraya joined her at the edge of the courtyard, her gaze sweeping over their allies, who spoke in low tones, trading stories of the battle, sharing moments of relief. "They believe in you, Azural," she said softly. "You've given them something Vyuva took away, a reason to hope, to rebuild." Azural nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "But the darkness isn't gone. There are remnants of Vyuva's influence, followers scattered across the land. They may not have his power, but they'll be desperate, hungry to regain what they've lost." Talvar approached, his expression grave. "She's right. Vyuva may be gone, but his shadows still linger. There are people who will resist this change, who will cling to the power he promised them. They won't let go without a fight." Azural felt the fire within her stir, a quiet, steady warmth that reassured her even as the weight of responsibility pressed down. "Then we do what we must. We root out his remnants, rebuild what he destroyed, give people a reason to stand without fear." The three of them stood in silence, watching as their allies regrouped, their numbers smaller than before but their spirits unbroken. Many had been lost in the final battle. The cost of victory was one that would linger with them. But the survivors carried a new resolve, a quiet, fierce strength that had been forged through the fires of battle. Later, as the day wore on, Azural gathered the leaders of the resistance in the great hall of the fortress, the broken remains of Vyuva's throne looming behind them. The hall was sombre, its dark stone walls a reminder of the power that had once reigned there. But today it felt different, empty of darkness, filled instead with a sense of purpose. Azural looked over her allies, her gaze steady. Vyuva's reign of shadows has ended, but his legacy of fear remains. There are people who still feel his influence, who live under the weight of the darkness he spread. It's up to us to show them that they don't have to fear anymore. One of the village leaders, an older woman with a scarred face, nodded, her expression fierce. "We will tell them. We will tell everyone that Vyuva is gone, that his power has been broken. People need to know that they can rebuild, that they can live without fear." Talvar's voice was quiet but resolute. "We can't undo the damage he did, but we can help them rebuild. We'll need to organize, establish places of safety for those who still live in the shadow of his influence." Soraya placed a hand on Azural's shoulder, her expression soft. "And you, Azural, you are the fire that lit this rebellion, that brought hope back to these people. They will look to you as their leader." Azural tensed at the words, the weight of them settling over her like a heavy mantle. She had fought to bring Vyuva down, had shouldered the burdens of others, but she hadn't thought beyond that final battle, beyond the moment when his darkness would no longer stain the land. She had never imagined herself a leader, a symbol for those who sought to rebuild. "I didn't do this to lead," she said softly, her gaze distant. "I did this because I had to, because no one else could stand against him." Talvar's gaze was steady. "And that's exactly why they will follow you. You didn't seek power, and that's why they trust you. You've shown them what it means to stand against darkness, to be more than just a weapon." The others murmured their agreement, their eyes fixed on her with a respect and trust that felt both humbling and daunting. Azural took a deep breath, feeling the fire within her simmer, a quiet strength that steadied her. "Then I'll do what needs to be done," she said, her voice firm. "We will rebuild. We'll find those who still serve his memory, and will ensure they no longer cast shadows over the innocent. And together we'll create a future free of fear." The decision made, they spent the next days organizing, sending messengers to nearby villages, spreading the word of Vuva's defeat. People began to arrive, survivors who had heard whispers of the rebellion, families who had lived in hiding, fighters who had resisted from the shadows. They came with wary hope, with stories of loss and survival, and Azural listened to each one, feeling their grief and their resilience strengthen her resolve. As the days passed, Azural found herself at the heart of a growing alliance, each person looking to her as the leader they had needed for so long. She moved among them, listening, guiding, learning their stories and sharing her own. Slowly, the fortress that had once been a symbol of Vuva's tyranny transformed, its walls echoing with laughter, its halls filled with people who had once feared to speak freely. One evening, as she stood on the battlements overlooking the forest, Soraya joined her, a quiet smile on her face. "You've done well, Azural. They look to you with hope, not fear. You've given them a reason to believe again." Azural gazed out over the land, feeling a quiet peace settle over her. "I never thought it would end like this," she admitted. "For so long I was consumed by anger, by a need for revenge. But now it feels like something more, something worth protecting." Soraya nodded. "That is the power of fire. It destroys, but it also gives life. You have found a way to wield it for something greater than yourself." Azural's gaze softened. "Perhaps, but I couldn't have done it alone. You and Talvar, the people who stood beside me, you all gave me the strength to keep fighting." Soraya smiled, her eyes warm. "And now you give that strength to others. That is the legacy you've built." Azural took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her journey, the trials and battles that had led her here, to this moment. She thought of Vuva's words, his taunts about her fire, his claim that she was nothing more than a weapon. But she had proven him wrong. She had taken control of her power, had transformed it into a force of hope and defiance, and in doing so she had freed not only herself, but an entire land. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of gold and violet, Azural felt a quiet certainty settle over her. Her path was no longer one of revenge, but of rebuilding, of healing. She would lead these people not as a weapon, but as a protector, a guardian of the flame that had brought them out of darkness. The night deepened, the stars casting a silver light over the land, and Azural knew that her journey was far from over. But she was ready, her fire steady, her resolve unbreakable. She was no longer a creature of vengeance, no longer a shadow-bound weapon. She was Azural, the fire reborn, and she would see this land not just survive, but thrive. For she had become more than she ever thought possible, a light that would guide them all through the darkness, a legacy of hope built from the ashes.